welcome to pose questions. Make sure you're asking questions, not statements.
Like this one made in China. Jay, just listen to your speech. I have just one very simple question. Look like it's made in China. In terms of Taiwan's relationship with the United States. Come up here. In terms of Taiwan's relationship with the United States, Obama administration recognized Mango's administration as a lawful elected authority of Taiwan. And with that kind of relationship, when President Ma tried to integrate Taiwan into the circle of influence of China, how can the United States trust this kind of administration to be their allies? Can share the military information, can share all the very sensitive strategic planning, can share all the OC3S command control system, even military exchange, because a lot of sensitivity and the technology and all kinds. So with that kind of paradox, how can the United States, they have very clear strategy and clear policy regarding bilingual. What is the line they should draw?
Well, President Obama's attitude towards the KMT government or Ma Ying-jeou administration is very puzzling, to say the least, because during the election, the White House took steps to really criticize the DPP and actually several steps, sent high-level officials to visit Taipei to boost Ma Ying-jeou's chances, announced that Taiwan was under consideration for the visa waiver program, sent Douglas Paul to Taipei to make notices in favor of the KMT. This was extraordinary, and to me, it's a very foolish thing to do. Put aside the fact that the U.S. has no business interfering in the domestic politics of Taiwan. It was kind of self-destructive, to my mind, because Ma Ying-jeou wants to surrender Taiwan to China, and it's not in the U.S. interest that Taiwan fall under the rule of the Chinese Communist Party. So I think there's a lot of confusion within the White House. You hear stories sometimes in the press that there's a fight between the White House National Security Council staff in charge of East Asia and their counterparts in the State Department. And I'm more familiar with the State Department officials like Kirk Campbell, the Assistant Secretary of State for East Asia, and I know he's very wise, very capable diplomat. But you hear that they don't want to announce it or let the outside world know they have disagreements within the administration. But I think there is conflict between the State Department and the White House. But unfortunately, in terms of foreign policy, the president has the final say. So sometimes you listen to the wrong people and end up with the wrong steps. So.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ru. Your speech is very wonderful. Okay, I like it. I have two questions for you. Okay, first, most recently, Japan and China get involved into it. There is a row over island, Blvd Island. I think you know that, right? And this action, incite a very profound reaction from China. They're raving, they're ranting, they even flex the muscle, right? And the U.S. border ship just yesterday, they passed by South Pacific Sea, those archipelagos, okay? And that angered China very much. And I'd like to hear your opinion that with this kind of action will evolve into a military conflict or not. If so, what is U.S. stand for? Okay, what U.S. will do will help Japan to fend off China. That's my first question. Okay, and the second question has nothing to do with this subject. Okay, it's Mr. Xie Changting, because I get lots of response from my friend saying that I'm for China. Okay, China. I cannot take it. Okay, and I'd like to, because you are a politician. Okay, I'd like to have your viewpoint. Now, Xie Changting traveled to China, and many people think he make a pilgrimage, and also kowtow to China. What's your opinion? Thank you.
First of all, I'm not a politician. I'll answer the second question first. It's unfortunate that Frank Xie went to Beijing because, after all, he was premier of the foreign government at one time, and he was chairman of the DPP. But he has always been known for his China-leaning tendencies. This is kind of the worst thing I've seen him do, because most observers would feel that he is really trying to develop connections with the leaders of, Beijing government, anticipating the day when China would, annex Taiwan, and he's, trying to secure his position under that situation. That's probably, how many people read it. So it's very unfortunate that DPP has come to this kind of well, how shall I say? It's really, to me, it's not an honorable act. It's the reverse. The Senkaku Island or Blvd type business, the chances of conflict between China and Japan, the actual military conflict, that's probably, the chances are not big because the economic relations are so tight now. And Japan's 20% of Japan's exports now go to China. It's relying on the Chinese market more and more for its own recovery. And China has leverage on Japan. For example, the rare earth metals. China has a monopoly of that. If they squeeze Japan on that, and the Japanese industry will really suffer. So the real military conflict, not likely. But then, what's unpredictable is the Chinese are sometimes so irrational. The nationwide riots. And there was a Chinese newspaper that said we should start a nuclear war with Japan and wipe out the Japanese population. Now that's very extreme language. The Communist Party rely on that kind of nationalism to boost its legitimacy, but there's a bad side of it. They may not be able to control it to the degree that they want. They could get out of hand. So you cannot rule out that something unexpected could happen. In which case, U.S. is in a very difficult position because under the U.S.-Japan Mutual Defense Treaty, we cover those islands because those are administered by Japan. So under Article 5 of that treaty, U.S. is obligated to help Japan in that conflict. So what's going to happen? Partly this might depend on who wins the White House in November, but I can't foresee the future, what's going to happen.
Next.
Thank you.
I would like to know what your thoughts are on the United Nations refusal to instate Taiwan in the General Assembly.
Well, the UN is founded on the principle that all people should be represented in that body. And of course, in the case of Taiwan, that's not happening. It's not right. On the other hand, the reality is that as one of the 5 permanent, member in the Security Council, China has a veto power. Even without exercising that power, it has enough influence in the General Assembly to deny Taiwan's effort to even just to enter the peripheral bodies, technical organizations, not to mention full membership in the UN. So as a practical matter, this is something in the future when the international situation changes drastically or something really drastic happens in China, and maybe we can realistically hope that one day Taiwan can enter the US as a full member. I mean the UN as a full member.
Next.
Sir, what can we, individual Americans, do to help in this cause made so clear by you today?
You can always talk to your congressmen, your senators, convey your concerns, and that's the first thing that comes to mind. Also, you could try to influence the media. The media coverage in this country sometimes is biased, or sometimes it shows ignorance. For example, when we referring to Taiwan, it keeps saying Taiwan was Chinese territory until Civil War and so on. Well, forgetting that Taiwan was a Japanese colony for half a century until 1945. But they keep repeating that kind of misleading statements all the time. Well, you can write a letter to the editor, point out the error, and ask them to make corrections and so on. There are all kinds of things you can do. But my concern, though, is, like I said before, there's too much complacency in this country at the government level, even in Congress, about China. And the problem is going to cause us. And we don't do something seriously and address it, then the thing will get worse and worse. And then when it gets really worse and you want to address it, the cost will be very high. I think Winston Churchill said something to that effect, that Americans always make problems, let it fester and fester, and then finally, make the right decision and take the right action. That may be true, we're doing the same thing again.
I would like to excuse me if I'm going to speak some English and Taiwanese to ask a question. Dr. Lu, I really appreciate that you give us this opportunity to listen to you. One thing you mentioned about the secret Deng Xiaoping, the issue, and besides that, he claimed that Hu Tao said that communism, they never changed for next 100 years. my question will be, now since, as we all understand, Taiwan has make table more work for you. So I'm very afraid of this is for the Chinese, and they are expert in division and invoke and make jealous each other, so make division and separate people. And this is to happen again and again. It will happen to the United States. And this is my question: how much American, even government, those people, do they understand the power of money? They will use the money to lobby the Congress, just like lately the public hearing about Huawei and Z-Tech, Huawei and Z-Tech. The final conclusion was there are no any evidence of spying U.S. security. Would this be a truth? I don't know. But does it to be determined to be researched? So what you think the possibility of this kind of thing will happen to the American legislators?
Yeah. Well, as far as Huawei is concerned, I share your anxiety that, like Senator Carr said, it's a threat to U.S. national security if we let them into our vital communication systems. But the problem is, like you say too, the lure of money, profit. And then too many of our big corporations, because they're attracted by the Chinese market, they have invested billions and billions of dollars there. And the Chinese would allow that, but with conditions that the U.S. share our most advanced technology with them. And also, the corporation better side with them even on political issues. They can pressure you that way. The Chinese are very clever people, very cunning in a way. And Americans, in comparisons, are kind of naive, Now, once I visited a congressman from Florida, and he just came back from a trip to Beijing, and I was talking to him, and he was quoting to me what the Chinese official told him, and he was citing them as though he was citing some verse from Bible, like, it's the gospel. Well, they said this must be true. And I said, wait a minute, don't you know that in Chinese statecraft, deception is a very, very important ingredient. They always try to fool you. What they say is not always what they mean, And he said, oh. So, this is an example. This is a congressman, but he said, it didn't occur to me that the Chinese might be lying to him or going to mislead him. They're honest people just like us, So we have problems,
Didn't work, so this.
Professor Lu, I want you to share my concern about, actually the problem is not U.S. or international, actually. The main problem is the people in Taiwan. And I'm concerned, when you share my concern, that the subversion, infiltration of Chinese into Taiwan, economically, politically, socially, culturally, eventually Taiwan may just, everybody wants to be with China.
Well, yeah, I share your concern, and I cited some examples too. But you may not be aware that Ma Ying-jeou asked the Chinese government to send a contingent of Chinese police into Taiwan. The excuse at the beginning was that to handle extradition cases. But since then, we don't know how the scale has expanded. You sometimes see policemen from China on the street of Taipei watching and taking pictures of protesters and so on. And we don't know how many people they have on the island. And we don't know whether they have invited officials of the PLA into the island either. And knowing Ma Ying-jeou, I'm surprised if he has done that already also. So Taiwan, as I said, is in a very dangerous, precarious situation right now. And Washington should realize that and try to cope with it before it's too late. But I don't see that kind of awareness in today's White House though. It's a problem.
Thank you. Dr. Lo, my name is Jonathan Zhang. One question only. The USA with Taiwan Relation Act, what is that about? Can we trust that?
Well, the key provisions are well known. It says that it is the objective of the United States to protect the human rights of the people on Taiwan. That's the objective. And then it said the U.S. administration should work with Congress to sell advanced weapons to Taiwan so it can maintain the necessary defense capabilities. It says the U.S. would regard as a matter of serious concern if China were to use force against Taiwan. It didn't say the U.S. would intervene, but it implied that it might. It also said the U.S. Must station enough air and naval force in the Western Pacific to cope with any Taiwan contingencies. Those are the key provisions of the Taiwan Relations Act. And different administrations have handled this law differently. Under President Obama, I think initially he was trying to get close to Beijing, especially in his first year. So he more or less neglected or ignored the requirements of the Taiwan Relations Act. To give you an example, that act was signed into law in 1979. So in 2009, the 30th anniversary, 32 senators wrote a letter to President Obama and asked him to reaffirm that act, the provisions of TRA. 32 senators. He didn't bother to answer. He just decided to disregard it because he wanted to please Beijing. So how would this administration handle that? In the future, you can't tell really because a law is on the books, but if the administration doesn't want to enforce it, it's just a piece of paper. It doesn't have any effect.
Anybody? Every time Chinese government send a high-level officer to Taiwan, or Taiwan government send a high-level officer to China. And Obama or the administration always said they are pleased, welcome to see the both sides talk. But every time to us, Chinese American, we know current government try to sell Taiwan to China. Does the Obama administration do not get the kind of message? This is my question.
Well, I'm sure they are aware of the danger. They have capable people in the National Security Council as well as in the Pentagon, in the State Department. The problem is not that. The problem is perhaps at the highest level within the White House, because particularly the Obama administration wants to, like he often says, that the U.S.-China relations is the most important relationship. It's the most important relationship, bar none. So he wants to try to improve that relations, and that's a very important objective for him. But I kind of think, this is my personal opinion, President Obama is kind of new to the foreign policy area. He's kind of inexperienced. And I don't know that he understands the big geostrategic picture. I don't think he has that kind of a concept. And on the other hand, he is very proud of his intellect. He is very sharp. And so he doesn't want to listen to expert opinions that much. Or sometimes he does, and then he ignores it because it's so full of self-confidence, even though his inexperience and his judgment is often wrong. But here's the problem. He doesn't realize his own shortcomings, so he can't improve. So what are you going to do? You know,
around this side.
Let me ask you a question in Taiwanese.
yeah.
美国政府是安对马英九安尼放伊线落去对来这个陈水扁，是美国政府伊相关要想啥，或者you know something we don't know. Yeah, give us your comment.
我这点是真歹答啦吼，因为美国政府这上面都唔捌发言啦，唔捌表现太多啦。啊，有表现太多是民间的学者，还是我做过官的人哦。The question was why isn't the U.S. government paying attention to the mistreatment of former President Chen Shui-bian, you know, in jail? He's really being mistreated. Confined in a very small space for a long time without a chair or a desk, and it's beyond description how he was mistreated. And there was even a story, and it may be true, that he was injected with some kind of a drug that will damage his brain without his consent or his knowledge. So a lot of things happen. That's a terrible thing. But the U.S. government so far is silent. It's a matter. It's hard for the U.S. to take, you know, official position because it's really Taiwan's domestic affair. If anybody has to really voice strong protest, it should be the Taiwanese themselves. But the Taiwanese voice is not strong enough to influence the Mao government's behavior. So I think that's where the solution is, if anything is going to be done, not from the U.S. side, but from within the island.